นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอภารุธาเดสังอมัทัสสะทาวราเอโสรวันธาบมุญชันตุสัทธัง So this evening I've been invited to give the Dhamma talk, and of course, as you all know, I've just returned from a 3-month journey in which I left here on the 6th of November and came back on the 2nd of February. So this went to many countries, to India and Thailand, Australia, New Zealand, Malaysia in 3 months. And of course I travel, I go by invitation, so I'm always the center of attention, continuous, ongoing, relentless attention. So I had cataract operations a couple of weeks ago in Bangkok, and I was really looking forward to having these operations, because then it's a good excuse to hide away. So there's a very good eye hospital in Bangkok, the Ratnan Eye Hospital, and they've been looking after my sight for years now with macular degeneration and then cataracts. So you can see I'm not wearing glasses like I used to. But I still need glasses for reading. So that's quite amazing, the miraculous modern technology in regards to medicine, because at my age, at 75, 76, one has better eyesight than at 40. So that's they remove your lenses and put in plastic ones. So I'm moving more into the bionic man period of my life. So this is visiting all these different places. In India, of course, India is always a fascinating country, and I went to Chennai first to give a retreat at the Theosophical Society, and then from there to Varanasi, where we spent, it's one of my favorite places on this planet in all its chaos and confusion. If you're European and like order and rules, then you'd be totally frustrated in Varanasi. It seems like total chaos, but yet it seems to work. So it was it's one of the most exotic, colorful places, and endlessly interesting to visit. And of course I've been supporting the education of 2 Indian girls there for the past 6 years, and they've I hadn't seen them for 6 years, so now the eldest one is about 12, 13 years old, and the youngest one about 10. And I went to see their school and their accommodation. They were their mother's a widow who lived out on the kind of in the open, a homeless family on Athigat in Varanasi, and she had, when Ajahn Janto and I were there 6 years ago, we met them, and she had 2 teenage sons, and then these 2 little daughters. One was about 4 and the other 7. The 2 girls, she wanted the 2 girls to be put in some kind of boarding school, so we arranged it, and I visited the school, a very good school actually, in Varanasi, and also they have accommodation at a hostel that's funded by some German foundation. So I checked out their accommodation, talked to their teachers. They're doing very well. They're both very pretty girls with developing poise, and they seem to love the school they're in. They wear very smart-looking school uniforms. And anyway, it was a joy to see them, and to also be, as the first time I had a chance to return to India, just to see exactly what is going on there, what the school is like, and how they are doing. So those of you who have contributed to the Indian Schoolgirls Fund, just to let you know, it hasn't been a waste of money. They're doing very well. That in India, of course, Varanasi is not. It's only a few miles from Sarnath, which is where the Buddha gave his first sermon, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, and that, of course, is the one that we chant the most here, the Four Noble Truths. So that was, we all went, Pei and Dayamin and Ajahn Panyasaro and Richard Smith, and we took the widow and her 4 children. She's got 5. She's got another daughter now, and she's remarried, by the way. And we took them all with us to Sarnath, and that was a very inspiring time, because we all sat in front of the stupa, the ancient stupa where the Buddha was supposed to have given his first sermon after enlightenment, and chanted the Dhammacakka Sutta. And it's so inspiring to think that 2,553 years ago, the Buddha gave his first sermon in that very place there, and then that many years later we're chanting this same sermon. And of course, this sermon, I think, is a perfect teaching. It is all you need to know for enlightenment is contained within that one sutta. And the fact that it was given so long ago, 2,553 years ago, for most of us, is a long period of time. And the teaching itself was one that is based on the common experience of suffering, of dukkha. And so this is the uniqueness of the Buddha Dhamma, is that as a religion it functions almost in a different way than any other religion, because it doesn't talk about God or metaphysical truths, but it's pointing to the most common human experience that we all share. And by investigating that, we realize ultimate truth. And of course, when the Buddha was enlightened in Bodh Gaya, he it occurred to him that what he learned is impossible to teach. Enlightenment and Dhamma, you can't, there's no kind of method or convention or any way that really defines it or describes it. So this is what, my constant reference to, it's an intuitive reality. It's something to be realized, recognized, not something to be defined and described. So then his thought was, there's no point, one can't possibly teach this because language itself is too limited. Language, thinking process, these are all conditioned experiences that we have, and they can only take you so far. And so how can you teach if there's no way to describe it? So then in his arrival in Varanasi, where he met his 5 friends, his colleagues who deserted him when they thought he was no longer practicing in the sincere way that he used to, he gave them this first sermon, which is, there is suffering, there are the causes of suffering, there is the end of suffering, and there is the way or the path of non-suffering. So this taking suffering and using it for investigation, reflection. So this is the unique quality of Buddha Dhamma, taking something so obvious, so undeniable, so ordinary to every human being, and making that into a noble truth to be understood and then reflected on till you see how you create suffering. When you let go of the causes of suffering, then you realize the end of suffering. And then you develop or cultivate the way of non-suffering. So this is a very ancient teaching, and I did feel incredibly inspired at Sarnath when I was there, because they made it into a very beautiful kind of park. And when I was there in 1972, when I went to Tudong, or walking in India, 1972 was the first time I went to India. The Buddhist scenes, the Buddhist holy places were not very well kept. They were just kind of left to grow wild with weeds, and there were very few. You could just walk around the stupa. There was no guards, no gardens, no lawns, and I did chant the Patimokkha there. I remember in front of that stupa. That was in 1972. So this is a way of reflecting on the way it is, on Dhamma, and traveling from India to Thailand, and then Australia, New Zealand, Malaysia. You're going into Asian countries now that are very well developed, modernized. Varanasi still has this sense of antiquity, of being an ancient city, but other than that, you go into Bangkok or Melbourne, Sydney, Wellington, Auckland, Kuala Lumpur, and they're all incredibly modern, affluent places. So I used to live in Malaysia before I became a monk in Sabah, state of Sabah on the island of Borneo, and then I went there several years ago just to return to the place I lived in in Sabah, but spending time in Kuala Lumpur and Penang, you realize what a kind of modern, rather amazing country Malaysia has become. It looks very well ordered, beautiful, and Kuala Lumpur has become quite an elegant modern city. And there, at this time, there's an incredible interest in Theravada Buddhism, especially the Thai forest tradition, amongst Chinese Malaysians. And in Kuala Lumpur, of course, this is the capital city, and it is. We have a supporter there who's been very generous to this monastery, and he arranged. I gave a retreat in the Genting Hills outside of Kuala Lumpur, a very beautiful place with very good weather, no mosquitoes, and beautiful venue. And this man's whole family attended. They're very eager to learn and very attentive and very easy to teach. Now, this is quite a change also to see the change in the Chinese Malaysian communities, which say when I lived in Sabah and traveled in Malaya in 1964-65, they were not interested or really knew nothing about Theravada Buddhism. So this interest in meditation, and especially in meditation and in spiritual development, because we all recognize the affluent world that we live in is, with all its advantages and perks that we can enjoy, and also is not the path of non-suffering. And so, we hear the news and of the political problems and economic problems of every country, and now the media is so immediate, so quick, that you can find out what's happening in Uganda or Mozambique or someplace so remote that you probably never heard of before. But it's always about suffering. Of course, the terrible earthquake in Haiti, I think, is one of the most shocking natural disasters that have happened for years. And just to see what a realm that we actually live in which the uncertainty, insecurity that we experience in both our own physical bodies and on the planet that we live on. Because now is a time where there's so much talk about degeneration of the environment and the greenhouse effect and the melting of the glaciers, and then there's earthquakes and weather changes, and then of course at my age you're very much aware of the aging process. So these are ways of reflecting on the way it is, that when we're looking for happiness in some kind of permanent way, or security through material wealth or through institutions or finding the right person or whatever, then we're inevitably disappointed, because this realm that we live in, that conditioned realm that we experience through our bodies and senses, its very nature is unsatisfactoriness, because we have to live in a realm of insecurity and relentless, inexorable changing that we have very little control over. So this is why the First Noble Truth is of dukkha, or suffering, because the ignorant human being wants happiness and security. We want to feel safe and secure. We would like to be happy rather than suffer. We think that having lots of money might make us feel secure or make us happy, or finding the right person that we can complete ourselves with by depending on another human individual. And yet all these, with all their blessings and assets, not to put them down, but they are also in this process of change. The very nature of phenomena is anicca, or change. So in my lifetime, at this age now where you look back over the years and you realize, how changed the world is from what it was when I was a young person. And just in seeing the changes in Thailand, for I went there first time, I think 1964, as a tourist. And then Bangkok in those days, in the 60s, didn't have any tall buildings. I think the tallest building then was about 4 stories high. And now it's kind of skyscrapers, high-rise buildings, glass towers and so forth everywhere, and motorways and viaducts, and it's like a futuristic city compared to what it was like in 1964, where it was more like an Asian city that was kind of I heard once it used to be called the Venice of the Far East, but in 1964 I couldn't possibly consider it anything like Venice. But it was certainly not an impressive city in its architectural buildings, except for maybe the Buddhist temples, which are still present, but now almost dwarfed by the high-rise buildings. So in just 75 years of life, the changing position of my own birthplace, the United States, rose up to be a superpower and is now fading out very rapidly. Saw the end of the British Empire and the Second World War, and on like this. So these things are now, for most of you, ancient history. But for me, they're memories that I still can remember, still have. So then this teaching of the Buddha is supposed to have a lifespan of 5,000 years. And of course in 1956 it reached the halfway mark, and then so now we're on the downhill slide, the other side, the exhalation. And at this time also we can see that the teaching itself has never been corrupted or changed. It's simple enough in its form, Four Noble Truths. It still works. It's still usable. It's not some antique for the anthropological museum. And so that it is the Buddha did establish a teaching that cannot be corrupted, and therefore a tradition, monastic tradition, to carry the teaching from that time in India to the present time. So just contemplate that this is taking something so banal, so common, as suffering, and that taking that and then investigating it. And so this, of course, the ignorance of the human mind is that we form identities. We identify with the conditions that we're experiencing. So when we don't reflect and we're not mindful, then we become the very things that we become our memories, our physical form, the age of our bodies. We have nationalities, we become whatever we think we are. And so the cause of suffering is this attachment to conditioned phenomena, ignorance and attachment to the body, to the mental states, the emotions, the memories that we all have. And so the way of mindfulness is the only way out of this dilemma at this time, in this form, because we have to live our lives within the changing conditions of the sensory realm that we're experiencing. So a human lifespan, say, even if it's up to 100 years, is the experience of change. And change isn't always going to be good. It's going to go up and down. So things get better, then they get worse. Change is about birth and then death, beginning and ending. So then the mindfulness practice, the sati sampajanya satipanya style of the Theravada scripture, of the Pali canon, is a very skillful teaching which encourages us to open up and look at suffering rather than seek for happiness. To really investigate this experience of consciousness in a sense realm, the way it is. So we would like it to be, we'd like it to be heaven. Most of us would like to arrange our lives so that we're always happy and healthy, young and successful, in a beautiful place with all the best of the senses and emotional experiences. But just like in Haiti at this time, we hear the most, dismal, grim, horrible news of thousands of people, several 100,000, I think it's up to 300,000 people dead, in just the movement of the earth. An earthquake. And of course Haiti is, I've never been there, but it seems to be the most unfortunate country on this planet, because it always seems to be going through terrible traumas, either through human-made ones or natural catastrophes. I always think it's a good reflection not to become, to suffer from this recognition of suffering, because we're not grasping suffering and wishing it was something else. We're understanding it. So then the direction we're looking at is not outward, like my suffering is because of being persecuted from outside, or not, or something going wrong, like an earthquake or a volcano, tsunami or a disease. But it's the suffering that I experience, that I create, is through ignorance of the way it is, of the Dhamma. So this very realm then is suffering, its very nature is change. Or dukkha, the Pali word dukkha, means that which is, unsatisfying, unsatisfactory, lacking, incomplete, insecure. And that implies change. So then our relationship to dukkha is not through trying to get rid of it or to find happiness, but to understand dukkha. And of course the direction, the Thai forest tradition, they use this word do jit, which means look here, look at yourself, look at your mind. And of course this is when I first went to stay with Luang Por Ajahn years ago in Thailand. I didn't know the language at all, and when the first year I was there, trying to learn Thai, and also they spoke in a northeastern dialect, so I found it incredibly frustrating trying to learn Central Thai, which is the kind of lingua franca, and then the northeastern dialect at the same time, and then. So I did pick up things, little succinct statements that would kind of stick in your mind, and one of them, of course, was do jit, which is look at your mind. And then Luang Por Ajahn would always point here to himself, to his heart. He wasn't asking us to look at him. It's a sign, isn't it, of don't look out there, don't blame the world for your suffering. Look here, this is where the causes of suffering arise and cease. And so I found just this simple, in Thai it's just dujit, two very monosyllabic words. It didn't take a great skill in the Thai language to get the point of that. And then also, the mantra Bhutto they teach, which was translated into Thai as Puru, which means the knowing, the one who knows, the knowing of suffering in the present. So these I could pick up on even before I had any ability to communicate sufficiently or intelligently in the Thai language. Because these were the words I heard and seemed to be, commonly ways of describing, the common way of describing the practice. So this is like looking at the First Noble Truth, isn't it? It's looking, we can, with the ignorant person's always blaming external things. I'm suffering because of my body. I have old age. Because somebody has some grudge against me and is abusing me, or because of the weather, or because of whatever. It's always we can think we suffer because of external impingement and external things. But with mindfulness, then we're no longer seeking to blame the conditioned world for our suffering, but we're awakening to, through awakened attention, through mindfulness, and then do jit practice of looking at what's going on inside you and at the body itself in this way of observing its nature. All conditions are impermanent and not self. So this is the constant refrain and teaching as exemplified in the Four Noble Truths, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. So over the years, I learned to understand the language and better, and then I began to. But during the first year, it took me. It's not an easy language to learn for most of us. It's not like a European language in any way. So you have to kind of apply different ways you have to listen to it and try to get the feeling for it. It's more intuitive than, say, prescriptive grammar. Because it's more like a tonal language like Chinese. And so you have to learn how to listen to tones, and in a way that that say in English the tone doesn't make any difference, doesn't make the meaning any different. Where in Thai, the tone you use can make a totally different meaning with the same sounding syllable. So this is the winter's retreat time, and of course it is a time for this kind of contemplation, reflection. Now, this word reflection, as I use it, notice that it is, our people sometimes wonder, is it thinking? It's not about thinking. It's not about thinking about the Four Noble Truths or analyzing them, but it's the first aspect of the First Noble Truth is a statement. It's words like there is suffering. The second is suffering should be understood. So this gives you the reflective form. So saying you're looking at your mind, you're no longer blaming any external causes for suffering, but you feel this sense of lack or dissatisfaction or whatever, something you want to get you don't have yet, something you have that you don't want. And then you observe, you begin to, that which is aware of suffering is not suffering. So this is the ability to discern. This is wisdom, in other words. Panya, or wisdom. Ability to discern through mindfulness suffering. Recognize it, in other words. It's not criticizing, analyzing, blaming, adding to the suffering, but it's discerning it. The suffering, there is suffering. There is a sense of anxiety, maybe, or worry, or incompleteness, unsatisfactoriness, loneliness, regret or guilt, or whatever form it takes in the human consciousness. In our consciousness, we tend to, when we're not awake and aware, we tend to worry about life. In affluent, that's one of the sicknesses of affluent societies like this one, is worry about the future. Anxiety, worry, hang on us, hang about us, even when we have security and comfort. Because this realm, its very nature, is uncertain and insecure. And if this is all there is just trying to make the insecure secure, we are well set up for increasing disillusionment and despair as we grow older. We don't learn from life. We don't have insight. We do not investigate. We merely become disappointed. Or then there's always the inevitable death. We all have to die. And that can be a source of anxiety. Or many people say they don't worry about death itself, but the process is, you're thinking of what'll happen. Am I losing my memory? Am I, I had a physical examination in hospital in Bangkok, and they did these ultrasound tests and all these modern technology with the latest medical equipment to find out what's going on inside this ancient old body, and you think there must be something, tumors or something. I mean, that's 75 years, it's a long time for one of these forms, and surely there's something terrible lurking and latent in there, but they didn't find anything. But it does, I could worry about that. I don't have cancer now, but I could in the future. And so it's possible, isn't it? And then the inevitable death of the body. Maybe it'll be painful. I was telling someone, we all like to die, and I'm kind of proud character, and I don't. Anything I hate is losing my dignity, feeling humiliated and losing dignity. This is my personality. It dreads most losing dignity, and then you think of, as you get older, you lose control over your bowels, your bladder. You end up with people giving you nappies to wear and sticking tubes in all your orifices and doing all kinds of weird things to keep the body going. Then you have to give up your dignity and just kind of surrender to whoever the doctor is or the nurse or whatever, to perform the necessary acts of prolonging the life of this form. So then, in terms of do jit, isn't it? Look at the mind. And so this carries you through to death. Haven't died yet, but it works at least for the aging process and for sickness, pain, and all the other problems that one experiences in this realm as a sensitive sense form in a sense realm. Now, it's very important for you to really notice this realm is like this. This is a sense realm. That, what we're looking at now is all about sensitivity, sensuality. Sensitivity is about pleasure and pain, isn't it? It's what pleases or displeases, liking and not liking, wanting and not wanting. This planet and life on this planet is all about sensory experience. The atmosphere, the environment, the air, the earthquakes and tsunamis and all the rest. This is the nature of this realm that we're experiencing, going through its vipaka karma, or its inevitable changiness. So whether it's planetary, or whether it's just this planet Earth, or it's the sun and moon, or the solar system, and then it goes on ad infinitum to who knows where the end of the universe is. Or are there other universes beyond our universe? And then we find ourselves as just a kind of pathetic little creature sitting here, breathing. And how are we supposed to relate to this vast, mysterious universe that we can observe? And what's it all about anyway? What is there? People question: are there other planets in this vast universal system that have human life on them like this? And so we wonder: are we the only freakish planet that can sustain human life, or animal life, or sense life as it does on this planet? But of course, we could speculate. We can seek the answers by sending rocket ships out into the universe to try to find out. Or we can look at our minds, and so this was the Buddha's approach. It's something we can all do to build rocket ships and so forth. Is not within my ability. And it's only fairly recently developed. But back in India 2,553 years ago, I'm sure nobody was even thinking about rocket ships or Mars or going to the moon, but living within this human form, on this planet, and using this experience to learn, to discern, to recognize, to notice, to awaken to Dhamma, or the way it is. And then Dhamma cannot be described. The best you can do is discern. There's the Dhammas of the changing conditions, and there's the Dhamma, the unborn, uncreated, unformed. And so the Buddha recognized that through awareness, through mindfulness, and clear comprehension, through observing, not through defining or analyzing or criticizing, but through just the simple intuitive ability we have to observe, be the puru or the puto or the knower. And so that is the essence. That is the gate out of suffering. Door to the deathless. Now going, I found like in being trained in Thailand with Luang Por Ajahn, because the culture is a very Buddhist, it's kind of basis, foundation is Buddhism. Unlike European culture, which is not. So you're living in a country that is, whether Thai people understand Buddhist teaching or not, something else. But culturally they have a foundation of wisdom, wisdom underlying their culture, that is there. And so maybe not recognized or appreciated, but it's there. And so living with somebody like Ajahn Chah, he was not idealistic about life. He wasn't, judging things about how they should or shouldn't be, but always pointing to the way it is. And so I found this of great benefit in my own practice, because my background is very idealistic. Americans were brought up, it's an idealistic country, based on ideas of freedom and equality and all this, so that we're brought up with ideals of how things should be. But living in northeast Thailand at Wat Pa Nong Papong, Luang Por Ajahn Monastery, it wasn't an ideal monastery, it was a living experience of, it was very, in those days, now it's quite modernized, but 40 years ago it was a very primitive kind of forest place with no luxuries, no modern conveniences, no high-tech of any sort. The most high-tech thing we had in the monastery was a pulley over the well. So and yet, because of the attitude of Ajahn Chah and the Thai monks living there, they were, they had a kind of earthiness, a groundedness that wasn't based on thinking about how they wanted life to be, but observing the way it is. Well, this was a new experience for me, because I never lived with such people before. From my own cultural background, education, going to universities and and so forth. I knew how life should be, how I wanted life to be, how, and I was very critical of the way it is. When I was a student in University of California, university students know everything. Now, at age 75, I realize I don't know anything. But when I was a youth, my mother said when I was 18, I knew everything. A know-it-all, in other words, and then through 43 years of monastic life, you realize you don't know anything really. So you ask me, what have you gained? What have you achieved in devoting your life to Buddhist monasticism in the Thai forest tradition? And it's not about gaining, it's about letting go. So it's the reverse of all worldly conditioning. And it's not about achieving, gaining, acquiring, getting something you don't have, trying to make a perfect monastery, a perfect society, perfect political system, economy, etc. But it's, the monastic form itself lends it, it's designed for relinquishing, for letting go. Because it's through letting go that we recognize the path, or non-suffering, or the end of suffering. And so during this winter's retreat, it is important to keep this, to reflect, to remind yourself, because our tendency, cultural tendencies, is always to blame. If I get what I need, then I can practice. If we could change things so that I'm happy or feel secure, then I can really practice. Or, always wanting something you don't have, or not wanting things to be the way they are. So these are the desires, the dhanha of the Second Noble Truth. Now, in the northeast Thailand, 40 years ago, it was a very undeveloped part of Thailand. But over the years, now it's very modern, there's good roads and so forth. But and also it's changing, it's losing that sense of it's becoming very westernized, Western values creeping in. Some of them good, some of them not very good. So I'm not against progress or trying to improve things. But the way out of suffering is not through looking outward, but through looking inward. And so this Four Noble Truths is the skillful means the Buddha left us to, if we follow the directions, they're very clear actually, it's very, very clear, the teaching. It's not a fuzzy kind of abstract thing, it's not philosophical, not metaphysical in its approach. But it is encouraging awakened attention to the present, to the way it is, to the body, to your own body, rather than somebody else's. Attention not to criticizing it or making any problems, but just noticing. So intuitive awareness is our ability to observe the physical body, just the posture that you're in right now. Sitting is like this. So this sounds rather simple-minded in a way. Who cares about, how should I sit then is the next question. It's not about how you sit, but observing the posture, this body that you identify with, and it's what it's doing at this moment. It's sitting, and then breathing is like this. Then aware of the mood or the state of mind we're in, of what happens to be, pleasure, pleasant sensations or painful ones. But our relationship to pleasure and pain, to feeling, to the physical realm, the sense realm, the emotional realm, the sense realm, in all its various aspects, this is knowing it. All conditions are impermanent. Sape sankhara anicca. So this is repeated over and over again, till eventually the penny drops, as they say. It begins to sink in. Now, over the years, say this year, this Vasa will be my 44th year as a bhikkhu. So, that's quite a long time to devote yourself to investigating suffering. And but that's been my main practice for 44 years, is this simple teaching of the Four Noble Truths. So I do have experience, and it is something I've developed from even the first year when I was a samanera, before I met Ajahn Chah. Just using this and referring always to the present moment. If I'm suffering, what am I attached to, is the question. If I'm feeling unhappy or anxious or worried or discontented or angry or jealous or frightened or whatever, from extreme emotion to just subtle movements of anxiety, worry, sadness, loneliness, when you are mindful of it, or when you attach to it or suppress it. So attachment or clinging to conditioned phenomena can be either through grasping it or trying to get rid of it. It's always this struggling motion. If you've got something you have that you want to keep, trying to hang on to it, or if you don't like it, wanting to get rid of it. So you can see this realm that we're living in, this sense realm, human realm, planetary life, is about birth and death. That's its nature, is beginning and ending, arising and ceasing. It's about sensitivity, about pleasure, pain. It's not about permanent happiness and security, or making the planet into what we desire it to be. We're not God. We cannot, transform conditioned phenomena according to our desires. So our relationship to phenomena is then to observe it, to recognize it, to realize it. And that which is aware of phenomena is not phenomenon. It's not a phenomenon. That is the path. So over the years, I had the insights, the first year in fact, but 44 years has given me a chance to really develop this path. So that it's something, it's reality. It's very simple, awaken attention in the present moment. And yet, because that sounds so simple and easy in its way, it's not. It's simple enough, but not easy, because we are the owners of our karma, heir to our karma, born of our karma, and so forth. We're karmic formations in the process of change. And so we've got to deal with the changing conditions that we experience, whether we like them or not, whether they're happy, sad, success, failure, praise, blame, whatever they might be. Our relationship to conditioned phenomena then is knowing rather than controlling, manipulating, identifying with any conditions, no matter how subtle or refined or how coarse. So this is why this emphasis on mindfulness, sati sampajanya, these two words in Pali, being able to reflect this moment here and now. Like we start with maybe, I want to become enlightened. I'm going to practice in order to get enlightenment. And most of us start with that hope. Or we hope to attain some kind of spiritual state, or some realm of happiness, or bliss, or rapture, or whatever, however we might perceive the result of Buddhist meditation. The enigmatic term nirvana, what does that mean? Nibbana. And we think, I'd like to attain nibbana. But nibbana is not attainable. You don't attain it. So this is where even the language gets in the way. Not an attainment, because it's recognizable through awareness. In other words, the deathless, the unborn, uncreated, is here and now. It's not something you lack or you need to get. It's just something you don't notice. It's that which you're heedless of because of your vipaka karma, your attachments, conditioning to the mental states, emotional states, physical body, cultural conditioning, your own views and opinions. So, in other words, I feel very grateful for having this long a lifespan to cultivate this, to develop this. Because one does lose it. You have insights, and then the urgency of the world impinges on you. There's always a crisis, an issue, a problem. There's always something wrong we have to make right. There's always, then there's all kinds of things in the society, in the communities, and so forth we have to deal with that seem important or urgent. And then we take on responsibilities. We become teachers and abbots of monasteries and so forth, and then we have responsibilities, duties, and that brings up all kinds of sense of I have to be responsible, and onward the whole sense of the self is promoted by positioning, by how we identify ourselves in the structure we're in. And so but the aim of our lives is letting go, liberation, non-attachment. And that, of course, easy to say, and this you have to recognize in your here. Do jit practice in your jitta, in your mind, in your heart. You have to observe. Be the observer, not the judge, not the owner, but the observer, the puru or the puto. So this retreat, winter's retreat, is opportunity to continue this. It's an ongoing, relentless, ongoing determination. You have to have a strong determination. Not a willful sense of, I'm going to get enlightened. That doesn't work. But it's through kind of this, the vehicle, the Vinaya, and the tradition is an expedient means that's available to us, so that we don't have to devote all our attention to worldly matters and problems, but to practice. That's our. If you want to have a duty, our duty is to observe. But don't take that personally, because it gets in the way too. If you can see what I mean, the samana life is not about achieving, attaining, or happiness, or security, but its very basis is insecurity. You're committing yourself to insecurity, to depending on others for basic necessities. And so it's a rather unique thing that our culture doesn't really appreciate. We don't understand it really, because speaking for myself, it's all about finding security, finding happiness in the world. I remember, growing up, and the sense of anxiety always with my parents about the future, about what if and what might happen. And there's, they went through I was born in the middle of the Depression in the 1930s, and my parents, I guess, lost everything they had in the Depression, so that they were very conditioned to worry, what if that happens again? And so it's and they didn't, they had no clue about looking at your mind. They had just worried whenever there was any sign of an economic crash. I'm glad that they're now, it's been 20 years since they died, I'm glad they don't have to experience, because they definitely worry about, even though they'd be over 100. Because that's their vipaka karma, is to worry. But worry is also can be seen. If you're worried, worrying is like this. You're worried. Or if you're angry, I feel angry because you said this to me. Or you feel greedy, you want something you don't have. Or you feel lonely, or upset, or anxious, or whatever. There's a knowing, isn't it? You know what you're feeling. Because when we do get angry, we say, I feel angry. Unless we're in total denial of our feeling. But even when we deny it, we kind of know it anyway, that I'm angry or frightened. It's like this. Now that knowing that you feel anger is not anger. So that's the puto, that's the knowing, the puru of anger is a condition that arises and ceases. According to your karma, when certain conditions come together, in the present moment you get angry, you feel this anger arising. That's just the way it is. So somebody abuses me, or calls me a nasty name, conditions for anger, say at this moment, arise, and be aware of the arising of this feeling. It's a vipaka karma. The more you develop this awareness, then you still have to experience your vipaka karma, but you don't grasp it. It's just this knowing, where anger, the vipaka karma of having been angry before, under certain conditions, when they come together, then this is what is happening at this moment. And through this awareness, then we may forget it and grasp. But then, as you investigate the Four Noble Truths, you see how not to even grasp the karma of the present moment. Now, this is very subtle, but it is possible. It is, the Buddha's teaching that this realm is all about greed, hatred, delusion, isn't it? It's all about survival of the fittest, learning how to survive in this realm where all the creatures are eating each other. where it's, we do have, human society, we can make moral agreements not to kill each other and so forth. But still, we still have this animal karma of survival. And this realm is about surviving, procreating, sexual desire, procreating the species is natural sensory energy that we experience through these forms. And our relationship to them then is knowing rather than grasping, rejecting, identifying with them. So also, many of you have probably heard by now that I'm planning on retiring, and because the first time in my monastic life, I think I have this experience to be free from duties. So I've invited Ajahn Amaravati, who's now at Berkeley. He's agreed to come and take on the duties of the abbot, or the position here. And he come in on my invitation, and have consulted with many of the senior bhikkhus, and it's all agreeable. Ajahn Amaravati has been a disciple and a very gifted monk, someone I trust, and who is also British, and he helped in the early years of establishing this monastery. So at the end of the Vasa, after the Katina, if my karma allows it, I will be a free man, free monk. And this I've never been, because I've either as a junior monk bound to certain monasteries and then to establishing monasteries. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity to have at the end of my life such an opportunity to not be continuously bound by the kind of duties of head monk, upachaya, and all the rest. So then you ask me, what do you plan to do? And I've decided not to try to figure that out. And even though the personal tendency is wanting certainty for the future, I can see the ridiculousness of that, of trying to set myself up into some kind of secure position, but in just trusting in the Dhamma for the future, whatever form it takes, whatever conditions arise. So this is, in other words, walk my talk, as they say, or practice what I preach. So it is kind of putting into practice this real samana life, which is, as I'm getting lots of offers, interesting offers and possibilities, but basically I don't have any plans other than breathing in, breathing out, and whatever happens, whatever seems right. Now this has all come together in a natural way, not through any of my manipulations or anybody else's. It's not through aversion or I have enjoyed living in England and here at Amaravati Chaturth, so it's not about disillusionment or despair or negative conditions are it's not through that this is happening. It seems to be happening because of the conditions arise for this to happen. And so I trust that. And then the change, you get attached, you identify Amaravati with a person, with me maybe, and that's something to look at, to observe, just to observe attachment to teachers, to monks or nuns or whatever is like this. I'm not saying you shouldn't attach, but whatever you're attached to, be the knower of it. That's all that's necessary. It's not about that you shouldn't be attached. So it's getting so familiar with attachment, with clinging to conditioned phenomena, so that you know it the minute it happens. The tendency, the karmic tendency, is to attach, to control, to manipulate conditioned phenomena, whether it's your own mind or the environment you're living in. So I offer this as a reflection and information.